Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters podcast, where I'm joined by my wife, Olympic mental performance coach, Steffany Hanlon-Francie. In these episodes, Steffany and I have a conversation about the different aspects of what we refer to as Mindset Matters, because we believe that for those who are awake, we are living in and through the most impactful time in history. Your view of the world is the filter for how you will experience the evolution and changing dynamics of it. Our intention is to provide you with ideas, nutritious food for thought, and some tools that you can use to help you in being your greatest self and living your best life. Listen in, enjoy. Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters, Steffany.
Hey, hon.
So we're recording this on the Monday of the long weekend, and then the release is this Thursday of this particular one. So I'm kind of cashed out today wearing a hat. I feel a little schleppy. Now, those looking at audio, they don't care, or listening to audio, they don't care about.
Looking at audio, that's funny.
That's funny. Okay, so here we are. You're back from Denver, Colorado. You got an award. You got a reward.
The reward, yeah, it was amazing. Colorado Springs, USA, U.S. Figure Skating, and the U.S. OPC, which is the Olympic and Paralympic Committee, had a big combined workshop and seminar for all their coaches. And in the middle of it all, they threw in a little award ceremony, and they honored several amazing, amazing people, coaches, service providers, sports psychologists, builders. It was incredible. Such class, first class event. The learnings were amazing. The events were amazing. And I got to actually do 2 seminars, which was incredible for many coaches. And I got to bring some of the Champions Journey information and also the information that we do at Think Tank. So I got to really bring our message to the world of figure skating.
So congratulations again. Now, I'm going to throw a little bit of a
It's like a weapon. Wait,
nice,
I'm
okay.
just for people on audio, I'm showing this giant diamond award.
Yeah, it's
if
very
you're on
nice.
YouTube, you can see it. What an honor, hey?
Coach of the Year. What is it, Coach of the Year, and what is it called again?
Peter Collins Sports Science Award.
Peter Collins Sports Science Award. Now, okay, thanks for sharing that, and congratulations.
Enough about me.
Yeah, enough about you. No, this is an interesting, because I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here, because when we started and we had, when we looked at the topic that we wanted to discuss, the feedback we got around discipline versus habits, it was a topic that was of interest to people. And then I kind of wanted to unpack discipline versus habits a little bit more, especially around the theme of clarity equals velocity, and realizing that when we know our why, when we have our purpose, these can't be left to the chance of habits and keeping habits. I think for me right now, I'm into the kind of unpacking the difference between a habit and discipline, and why habits don't really apply to achieving goals and what that really means. And so I'm still unpacking all of that. It'll be a little bit disjointed, but one of the things around discipline is that it takes resilience to have discipline. It takes a clear outcome that you're working backwards from. You don't necessarily know the path, and that's why it takes discipline. It's why habits, somewhere in there, habits fit. I'm just not sure. When I look at the book by James Clear, which we talked about briefly in the last Habits versus Discipline episode, this is kind of part 2. I mean, it was a bestseller, Atomic Habits. James Clear is an amazing writer, and there's a lot of really, really great stuff. So I don't want anybody thinking that I'm trashing the book. I'm not, and I'm a huge fan of James Clear. I was a fan of James Clear before he was a thing. I've been following him for a number of years, and so I've loved his writing. So my point is around all of this is around discipline, and the curveball I'm going to throw you is this. You are a bit of an anomaly, for sure. So when we think about all of the things that you've achieved that are really outside the norms, if you will, whether it be the first female as an NHL coach, the first, whatever coach you were that went to Olympics and world championships, and you've done a lot of things, and you're not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You didn't play hockey. You went on to be a mental performance coach that's recognized as of today, even, by the US, not just the figure skating portion of US, but by the US Olympic Committee, various areas of that. So you've really done a lot of really cool things. And the curveball is this. When we talk about discipline, we look at clarity equals velocity. And there was a lot of clarity that you had in some of the things that you wanted to achieve. You want to be the best in the world at what you do. And what you do is not definable and describable often. That is sometimes the challenge. But your discipline is what kept you going towards the end called world class, or the best in the world at, or something along that line. You follow what I'm trying to say here? Or am I just talking?
I do, and you're making me a little nervous here because this is definitely a curveball. We didn't discuss this in our little pre-meet, so I just want to know where you're going here, hun. Come on, bring it on.
It's about discipline. I mean, at the end of the day, when you think about clarity equals velocity, if we don't know purpose, if we don't know our why, if we don't know what we're working backwards from, habits don't get it. Then maybe you can get some habits in there and they make sense. But the point is that it takes discipline to achieve our purpose. But if we don't know what our purpose is, if we don't know what our values are, if we don't know what the outcome is we're working backwards from, and if it isn't within our values, we're not going to get there. And the more we have clarity around what it is that we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to be, then we can exercise discipline to get to that outcome. I'm
picking up what you're dropping.
My point is that you had to exercise over the years a lot of discipline. You've gained a huge amount of resilience because you got major pushback at many, many kind of levels, if you will, if that's the right term. And it took discipline to stay focused on what the outcome was, which was, how do I not only be the best in the world, but bring value to clients. And then ultimately, goes back to when Glenn Sather hired you. He goes, "There's no job here. If the players like you and you resonate with what they need and they see improvement, then you got a job." And you were there for many, many years. It's like what you've been doing all is about discipline and your purpose, which was to bring huge value, to make a difference in other people's life, which is purpose. That's what we talk about often. That takes discipline. It's just right. Maybe I'm trying to split a hair here, but it's the difference between discipline and habits. Because the minute are you gaining what I'm? Okay, sir, are you finally catching what I'm throwing?
Yeah, I'm catching on here. I'm picking up what you're dropping, cowboy. So I think where I'm feeling a little bit awkward is that if people know me, they know I'm not super organized. My office isn't a shit show. My closet is like bursting with stuff I haven't worn in 4 years. So if you were to look at me from the outside and say, okay, well, what are the habits what is the correlation between those types of things that people judge, right? When it comes to habits or organization or purging or whatever, I don't have a lot of those you have those high level skills. I don't have that. But so if I was being judged for that kind of stuff, people would say, well, how is it that she has the discipline and the awareness and the focus to stay on track to become the best in the world and to make sure that she stays clear on what it is that she wants to do? So if you were to conflate those two things, it really wouldn't make sense. And so many people that know me, it's like they can't figure out how I did this. And they go, you must be a fraud, or you must be not qualified or something because your office is a shit show. I'm like, you know what? I don't even think about that when it comes to my discipline and my commitment to my outcome. So what I'm hearing you say, and if I kind of fold it into what I'm thinking and feeling, is that I've never wavered ever on wanting to be the best in the world. But it wasn't about me. It was about wanting to change a sport. It was about wanting to see the outcome of the clients that I was working for. I was laser beam focused from the start. Mm-hmm. And I had to figure out what it was that I needed to do to get myself supported. And you were a big part of that. My team I'm the team behind the team, but I had to get myself supported so that when I would go on these journeys, and I know I was going to take a lot of hits. I show up in the world-class figure skating world or NHL hockey, and they're like, who the hell is this chick? Like, they don't know where I'm coming from. So I would have to take a lot of hits when it came to, maybe I didn't follow the normal pathway. I told a story this week at the US Figure Skating and PSA function, and almost brought me to tears, about one of my mentors and one of my closest friends who didn't believe that I was doing what I was meant to do and that I was committed to doing, because she had done everything right. She had followed the path and taken all the courses and ticked all the boxes. And she ended up not ever becoming an Olympian. And I was doing all these random things and trying to figure out what I was going to do. But I made it about my why. I made it about my why was about other people. It wasn't about me becoming this world-class coach. It was about, I needed to bring my message to these athletes and to the world. And I think that's what the shift is in the discipline, is that I stayed laser beam focused on that. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I wasn't trying to do anything. I didn't kiss anybody's ass. I didn't want to, step outside my own values to do this. And I had to stay true to that. So when I was getting hammered, especially with one of the federations in my own federation in Skate Canada, is when they called me a fraud, and they basically dismantled my business in Western Canada for some weird reason. I'm not sure. It didn't stop me. It made me more resilient, because it was about my values and it was about what I was committed to. It wasn't about being accepted or approved by anyone.
It's interesting about that, which is back to your mentor, friend, coach at that time, was I think she had made the statement, I worked 30 years to do this, and, you did it in 20 or 10 or whatever her story was. But the point is that, back to what you said, she was following that path and that TikTok and doing all of the things. And you were just not letting that. Resilience was what got you out of the way of the politics of sport. Often, right? You're going, no, that's just the politics. I'm not buying into it. Your goal, though, of being the best in the world at what you do. Now, the problem with that, which was always kind of one of your goals, you said it many times, I want to be the best in the world at what I do. Nothing wrong with a goal like that, except for it's hard to define what you do when you're talking about what you do. Anyways, you kept going. Now, this is all to say this, is that discipline, and when I think about discipline versus habits, this is where I got to go with it, is that it's intentional. Discipline is intentionality. Whereas when we think about habits, those are, I guess we would call them automatic behaviors. And when you think about automatic behaviors, they're going on without much thought. And I think that can be a good thing in some aspects of what we do in our life. Discipline is really, on the other hand, it's necessary for us to act with that intention and with the purpose, and it really makes sure that our actions are, I think, aligned with our core values and our long-term goals. So I think that's the key here, is that goes back to when we say clarity equals velocity. You gain the speed, or you gain the velocity, and I don't want to say speed, you gain velocity when you're clear on what it is you're working backwards from and it's aligned with your values. Then it takes discipline, but that's where I think that discipline is, if you are connected to the right outcome based on your values, based on the fact that this is what I want to achieve, some would call it your why, for example, then discipline is always much easier. It's kind of the hack. Go back to what it is. So every time you say, well, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to go there, or I don't want to do this, you reconnect to what is the outcome you're working backwards from. So when you're facing the challenges you're facing of the politics and all of the issues that happen in governing bodies and all the things that you face and travel, it takes discipline to keep working through that. And you can do that by connecting to that outcome. That's kind of where I was going with it. Again, we didn't, this was a bit of a curveball in all of this, but I think that when you focus on really purposeful actions, that's different than a habit. And that was really kind of my point. I don't want to beat it to death, but that's for me what it was about.
No, I appreciate that. And I think the distinction between habits, and I think about habits sometimes in my world, are more negative. So the habits or the line is water always flows downhill, is that you go to what's easier, what's convenient. And one of the things my mom always taught me was do the opposite, not the obvious. So do the opposite, not the obvious. And then she would say, I'm sure like a lot of moms said, if everybody's going to jump off the high level bridge, are you going to do it too? I was never a follower. And I think what happened was when it came to my discipline is I was more committed to my outcome and to what it is that I wanted to provide and my purpose than I was to being liked or caring about what other people thought about me. It was hard with my mentor coach is that I honored her. I mean, she opened doors for me early in my career that I will never, ever forget. Mm-hmm. But there was a tipping point. And I think what happened is that I became a little bit too in a state of honor that I forgot a little bit that I was doing this. She opened the door, but I was the one that stepped through it. And I kept going because it was aligned with it was that I valued. And what I did was, the funny thing is when you circle around and when you're getting hit, for me, taking the hits, female in a man's world, you must be wanting to sleep with the players and you must be wanting to do this. You're an Olympic coach now. What did you do? Who did you screw? What did you do to, you're obviously not following the proper protocol. So you must have done something manipulative. That's what I hear you saying is that if you step outside the line, like I'm going to talk for myself. I stepped outside the line and said, okay, I want this more for other people and my purpose than I want for myself or accolades or whatever it was. I still see now coaches that I work with in the figure skating world, they are working to be in the kiss and cry or at the boards on NBC. That's their ultimate goal. And I was like, I don't actually want to be on TV. I'm good. I've done all that. So I want to be behind the scenes in a way. And then, 20 years later, I get my diamond trophy and, it felt really, really, really good.
It's nice. Well, you get acknowledged, right? So that's perfect. But, when we go back to a couple of things, that you started when you talked about it, which was, your office is a mess or your clothes aren't organized or whatever that might be. You're not good at that. This goes back to the fundamental of where is the best use of your time. So if you're as focused as you are on an outcome as you have been for many years, let's face it, we love living in a clean home, but we don't clean our own home. We clean up after ourselves, but we generally are hiring somebody to support us in that regard. You don't necessarily always have a clean office. Every so often you stop and straighten it up, but ultimately somebody comes in a few times a year or a couple times a year and kind of rebuilds the whole thing again for you to mess up. The point is that it's not one of your highest values. Like you like it. It's not that you want a messy house or a messy closet. It's just for you to do it. It's not your highest value. And you look at what you're really focused on. And that is achieving an outcome of supporting your clients. That's your first priority. And a lot of what you've done has been very innovative. When we think about Think Tank and even the program that we put together for Think Tank, is a lot of the stuff that we present at Think Tank is programs or I guess exercises, if you will, that we collectively have created, but they all stem from a lot of the work that you did many, many years ago, and we've grown and expanded on it. But the point of it is that when it comes to discipline over habits, as an example, again, it's about knowing the why we're doing it because we have to go through tough times. Now, I don't know if you followed David Goggins. He's now known as,
oh, yes, I do. 100%.
He's called Goggins. He's intense, but he talks so intense. He's so intense. Now, I'm not suggesting for a minute. I mean, that's an extreme, right off the charts kind of guy who,
Navy SEAL kind of guy.
But he was a SEAL, but where he started and where he's come to, and that he just embraces pain. He embraces pain. He literally wakes up in the morning and goes, "What's the most uncomfortable thing I can do today?" Now, to whatever end that serves him, that takes a lot of self-control. It takes a lot of discipline to do that. So when we are working backwards from an outcome that we want to have in our life, what he shared, which I thought was really good in my own experience over many years, is that we expect a result You're not going to, like, say, for example, you look at a David Goggins and go, I want to be like a David Goggins. Well, it's taken him years to get there. And this is the fundamental. It took you years to get to a place where you're receiving an award of this level. And you've received many awards over the year. I think this one is probably one up there in the top 3 or 4. Hey, wouldn't you say?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But it took years. And that was through discipline of showing up, staying on point, always going back to what is best for my clients, what is the best value I can bring, what am I not going to buy into. And the reason that I keep shining a light on this is that it was through that clarity that you had of that outcome, that big goal that kept you on a path and is a hack for discipline. And this is where I got to, even in right now. And I just know that over the years of my own training and my eating discipline and all the rest of it, it's come and it's gone, but it feels different right now. And I'll tell you in another year from now, I just know that it feels different. Not drinking, no problem, not even an issue. Now, eating, sometimes it throws me off, but because I've been so disciplined the other times, I can give myself a day or two in a row where I go, and whatever, and my whatever isn't even that bad anymore. And I'm noticing the difference. Why is that? Because I'm looking 5 years in advance and I'm going, who's that guy? And I keep linking back to my 5-year, the vision of who I am in 5 years. I keep linking back to the benchmark I want to set and lead as an example for what other 65-year-old men can achieve and what they can stand for and how they can be. That makes discipline that much easier. Now, what I'm trying to get to in all of that is what part do habits play a role in? What is the habit? And I can't come to a conclusion around it. I don't know what my habits are. Maybe you can tell me.
Oh my gosh. That's a really great question. And I don't know if I've ever heard anybody break it down like this before, is that I see some of your habits, but I think they're more blind spots.
Well,
I know my habits.
Okay, but let's just consider that. Okay. Whatever my blind spots are, what you pointed out and saying, okay, those are habits. Now, that's the problem with habits. So in other words, we get into this routine. And my point is this, is that I'm hoping that whoever's listening to our podcasts are overachievers. They are those who want to do more, be their best version of themselves, grow into that, knowing and pushing themselves and growing a little bit at a time. And, self-reflection, that takes intentionality, that takes awareness, it takes a commitment. And, if there's nothing that I've learned so much from the many guests that I've had on the Everyday Millionaire, the intentionality is really a big part of it. And I'm going to start folding in a different question around discipline. And life throws curveballs. You've faced a lot of adversity. I've faced a lot of adversity. And it takes discipline to get through that adversity. And where it breaks down is if the outcome isn't clear, if your purpose isn't clear, if your values aren't clear, guess what? You wake up 2 months later and you go, oh, I was doing that 2 months ago. And I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the willpower. That's a big one, right?
Right. Yeah, I have a real issue with that word, willpower. I always called it why power or want power. It's never will. We don't have the will. Like, we're human beings. We're going to be distracted. We're going to follow the shiny thing, or, something needs to be more convenient or easier. So for me, it was never about will. I mean, I was always willing to do it, but it was about my why. And Simon Sinek said it really well, and he was talking about the why being the center point of why we do anything. And I think, when I look at you and your goal to be that, never let the old man in, I think a lot of our listeners and some of the clients and the people that have reached out to me recently are kind of younger than us, like 20 and 30 years younger than us. And they're like, yeah, but you guys have got the experience and you've got this and you got the, the compound and you got this and you got money. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. That's never been a driver for me. And I'm curious to know what your thoughts are when it comes to that. Is that when our 30 and 40-year-old friends and clients and people that are reaching out to us and talking and asking us questions, why would they come to Think Tank with a couple of 60-year-olds?
Well, that's why.
Like
That's why. I can tell you, and you know this about me. So I want to go back, and I'll come to back to this in a minute. I want to this is a kind of a yellow flag for anybody who's having thoughts around willpower. Whoever has used the term, I don't have the willpower, or I need to be motivated. We've been very, very clear. We're not motivational coaches. We don't motivate people. We're not that's not what our gig is, because there's a story around that. Think about the words willpower and motivation. If you need to have willpower, or if you need to be motivated, then there's a very good chance that you don't want to do what it is that you're setting out to do. It takes willpower and motivation. So you have to look at that and just consider what that outcome is that you're working backwards from. It goes back to, the days of, you don't see it so much. My observation today when we were in Fort Langley at the parade is, I didn't see any smokers. And I go, wow, nobody smokes anymore, which is not true. But, in Canada anyways, fewer and fewer people smoke. My observation around that all is that, over the years, when you talk to those trying to quit smoking, they go, I need the willpower. I don't have the willpower. And what you learn, the hacks in that, is then quit being a smoker. In other words, position yourself as a non-smoker. Those are all hacks. My point is this: willpower and motivation implies that whatever it is that you need those things for would indicate that you really don't want them. Because if you're aligned with your values, then it doesn't take willpower or motivation.
That's so true. Oh yeah, preach, cowboy.
It's not about preaching. It's just like pay attention. These are little signals, right? If you need willpower to do something or motivation, consider that the other word, which is inspiration. If you're inspired to do something, nobody's got to tell you to do it. You just frickin' do it, because it lights you up. When you're doing what you love to do, nobody's behind you going, you got this, I'm going to motivate you. You're going like, get lost. I got things to do here. So my point around all of that is just that. Now, in terms of hanging out with, this was something that I got to quite recently, actually, is my own realization is that when I was in my 40s and less in my 50s, it took me a while, I wasn't really all that coachable, as you know. And I saw it as because somewhere in my, I don't know, my box called being a man or being smart or something, is that if you're having to ask for help, you're not smart enough. So I go through, back in those days especially, the not enough syndrome. We all have that. At some point, everybody goes through not smart enough, not tall enough, not rich enough, not good looking enough, not enough. We're just not enough, right? So we can get into those patterns. Back then, I had too much, pride maybe, that reaching out and asking for help or getting good guidance, from somebody who'd been there, done that, was not my thing. I wanted to do it on my own. Having said that, I did have one mentor in my life who I respected immensely, was Ed Newman. Now, Ed passed away when I was still young. would have been 35, 38 years old, but Ed was amazing. But then when I lost Ed, I never found another Ed, and I didn't go looking. And so my point is this: today, as I sit here today at 60, almost 6 years old, I look and go, I wish I would have had a me in my life when I was 40 and 50 and even 60. You know what I'm saying? The experience, the business experience, and I just had this conversation with a couple of people on my podcast, guests, who go, we've made so many mistakes. Dwan, she's going to wait till you hear her podcast. She was so awesome. They're rebuilding a small town in the US, which just blows my mind what they've got going on. But she's my age. You would never know it. But we both came to that conclusion. Can you imagine if we would have had us at a young age? My point is, that many mistakes, that much experience, that much, I'm going to call it wisdom. You just get it. It just comes with years, I think.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is your relationship with Ed. And I had a couple of really strong mentors growing up as well. And I think it takes a lot of self-confidence to put yourself in the mentee role. My mom always said is that when you're growing, always have a mentor and an apprentice. Mm-hmm. And I held that always my entire life. So I look at the women in my life that are, you know, younger than me and that I'm, in a sense, informally or formally mentoring in that way. But I always have somebody on the other side that's mentoring me. So I can stay in the center and not get in my ego thinking, A, I know too much, or B, because it's also ego when when you're not coachable, right? That's it's still
100%.
a play that it's an ego play. So if you think about always have a mentor and an apprentice, and anyone who's listening, go, okay, who's my mentor and who am I apprenticing? And not your kids. This is the thing, is that you want to put your kids in environments where potentially that they're going to be influenced by somebody that you admire and you respect, that align with your values. Because sometimes, when they get to a certain age where they're not interested in having you as a mentor, and as a parent, that's really difficult. So to try to place yourself, and that's what I was really blessed with, we were blessed with growing up, is that we had people going, we would love for you to mentor our kids, our children. And we've had that blessing all along in our entire, and for me and my entire, including Erin, our daughter, your daughter, is my bonus daughter, is that I got to be a mentor because I didn't take on the role of stepmom or stepmonster. I wanted to be a bonus mom. And so I held myself as a mentor so that I didn't, when the things would go negative or that they would question or push back, I didn't take it personally and didn't take it on emotionally. I thought, okay, well, this is part of their growth and development as they're discovering who they are as young women. And the same thing with the young men that I've mentored over the years. I think there's been thousands and thousands of young men for the last 30 years that have come through my programs who I've had the opportunity to take a stand as a female, as a powerful woman, as a guide, as a nurturer, and be able to show all the aspects of a woman to a young man. And I got a LinkedIn message a couple of years ago from a player that I worked with the Edmonton Oilers and also with the St. Louis Blues. He ended up being on both teams. And he said, I chose a different woman to marry because of your mentorship. Like they were, you think of hockey players, and of course they have athletes, they have a lot of opportunity and lots of women can throw themselves at them. And he was very much in that swim lane where he's very attractive, making lots of money, etc. And all of a sudden he stepped back and went, whoa, that's not the kind of woman that I want to be. And then he started kind of looking at a partner or women who had more aligned with his values. And now he's got 3 children and he's played in Europe, and now he's a real estate investor. And there's all these things that have come from me being true to myself and not dropping my gear. Glenn Saylor always said to me, keep your eyes open, your nose clean, your mouth shut, and your pants on. And to me, that was the best advice when you think about it in a male world. And because of that, the men that I got to mentor, because it's an honor for a woman to be a mentor for young men. Like it's very weird. And I think of the ice dancers I worked with and the male figure skaters, is that I had to stay true to myself, not to try to impress them or try to hit on them. Like I was like, no, I want to be a strong, powerful, nurturing female role model in your life. And then when I got that email from this young man, well, he's not young anymore, he's probably in his early 40s, that he chose a different woman because of my mentorship to marry.
Which is all to say that, this goes back to, when we talk about mentorship, coaching, when we are, as we're having these conversations, for example, I want to bring us back to habits and discipline, is that, we kind of walk our talk, but we're human beings. We have all the same challenges. That's why we can relate to clients so well. It's why we can, facilitate and support people in getting to their outcomes, because we've been through it ourselves, but we've been through it with, to your point, hundreds and even literally thousands of different people in different aspects of what they're doing in business. So I want to just kind of finish this off, this conversation off around discipline and habits again. When it comes to having discipline, first off is the clarity portion of it. That's where, we talk a lot about Think Tank. We're hoping people register for Think Tank, small group, and helping people get clear on purpose, get clear on values, get clear on what it is they're working backwards from, then giving them a context for discipline, giving them a context for methodically working towards that outcome with clarity, and then giving and having the tools to get back, because you go through periods of time where, hell, I was so clear, and now it's like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And, when you think about, just some examples that were coming to mind when I was making some kind of notes and research about this, you think about J.K. Rowling as an example. You think about her as an author, she's now a billionaire given all the things that, that happened with the Harry Potter books. But, she was dealing with depression. She was divorced. She was, went through a really bad marriage, single mom. And she just stayed disciplined on whatever writing schedules accommodated what she had to do, as a single mom with no money. And she stayed really disciplined in writing that book. And even when she wrote whatever book it was, I think Philosopher's Stone was the first one, but I don't know that to be true. Whatever her first book was, she had publishers that said, this will never sell,
You know what's really cool about that is she's also getting hammered in social media right now for some of the stands she's taking. And you know what's really cool about that, now that you bring it up, is she's not defending herself. She's like, these are my values. You can have another opinion.
Yeah.
All of the actors in the movies have kind of stood up against her, yet they wouldn't be where they are had she not written those books. So she has, for me, an interesting way of being is that she's not being aggressive. She's just saying, this is who I am. These are my values. This is where I came from. I was in an abusive marriage. I left my marriage. I raised my son. I stayed. And if it was 2 a.m, I would write. Every single day I would write. And I think of that as the foundation of discipline. And now that she's getting all this hate and this pushback and the things that are going on, I'm like, you know what? You go, girl.
Yeah, and lots of people don't agree with her, but it doesn't matter. It's not that her values are wrong and yours are right. They're just different. The other one that I use these examples, I think they're kind of interesting, is so Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, as he tried to, apartheid and, bring South Africa, from apartheid to democracy, but 27 years in prison, and it was not easy time in prison. Lots of time was in the hole, as in solitary confinement, blah, 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 all the rest of it. And so think about the discipline it took, but he was so committed to that outcome. So there's many stories like that. And it's why I come back to so for you listening is, where do you break down because you don't have the discipline? And when you start to realize that, well, you're busy trying to create habits aren't nearly effective as having discipline and intentionality, knowing what your values are, living into your highest values, and being clear on what your why is, what your purpose is. That's, I think, the hack that we would share in this particular episode. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. Just to bring it home for me is that so many times in my experience and working with people, whether it's clients or even some friends, is that something has to get so horrible. There has to be an accident or an illness or a death or something before you wake up and go, you know what, I need to make a change. And what I want to offer is that it doesn't have to be that. You can actually take that intentionality and be in the center of your life and make changes and have the discipline that it takes, so that it doesn't take an injury or an illness or a death or a divorce or something that wakes you up to changing your life. What if we could change our life and live it on purpose and create it by design in a way that before this shit hits the fan, so to speak, that you're prepared? And that's what I love about our work. And I'm really proud of us, hun. And I just really acknowledge the support and the work and the fact that we're still figuring stuff out.
We'll always figure stuff out. We'll always be figuring it out. Okay, so as we wrap it up, I think at the end of the day, we look at clarity and velocity, theme for 2024. Discipline, being clear on what it is that you're trying to achieve is going to be really important, especially as we go through what we're going through globally, global macro. We can't, as we watch the world unfold, certainly a frightening time in many people's cases. Many are struggling with, the confusion, the uncertainty, the fear of what is to come or seems to be, and others oblivious to it all. But at the end of the day, we know that clarity equals velocity. And when we connect discipline, intentionality, self-reflection, self-awareness, have some fun along the way. And that's why we're having Think Tank. So I know I threw you a little bit of a curveball, but thanks for sharing some of your lessons and your stories.
Yeah, thanks, Son. That was fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you found value in the podcast, please take the time to rate and review and share with others. Share with your friends. As it is my goal to always improve and to provide the highest value for you, the listener. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions you'd like answered, please email me at ceo@reincanada.com. That's ceo@reincanada.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, Patrick out.